to the community development report. Mr. Peter Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fairly light month in January with 3 zoning permits, 10 building permits, and 23 code enforcement actions. However, our municipal civil violations are up and running. We've collected 3 fines at this point at our office desk and scheduled re-inspections and worked out with the property owner our expectations for cleaning up the junk and debris. 2 of the violations are working their way through the district court system. So we are on every Wednesday sitting down, assessing those violations and moving forward. We're keeping it very nice and level right now, so it doesn't get out of hand for us.
Okay.
Unless anyone has any questions.
I had a quick question.
Yes.
How are you doing on staffing? Is that...
Staffing's fine, and staffing is
Okay.
primarily through my company.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant.
We've had to shift some around. We did lose someone for close to 30 days. I've been doing a lot more sitting at a desk and on the computer, on the phone with minor items. Been learning a lot how our process works from the ground up. So we just had some health issues with one of our staff members. We currently have a posting on Indeed to hire 2 more people to come in and float between equalization and community development.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the monthly report that you give, I see on Fairfield Township, they have just 1 listed. According to Fairfield Township Board, they should have several. How do the things make it to this form? Are there things in process with them that wouldn't make it to this form?
Yes, these are actually our action taken. We went out to re-inspect.
Okay.
We issued a ticket. We had a conversation, a substantive conversation with somebody about what they intend to do. When someone tells us, I'll clean it up, we get that in writing as much as we can to hold that against them, essentially, that, hey, you promised. So what you're seeing there is an actual action that took place out in the field. An action will also show up there if we have to go over to the magistrate's office and go through that. So any action that our staff is taking, all Fairfield violations are still there, and we're working on it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And we do, just as a refresher, and for some of the new members, we do prioritize our violations 1 through 3, 1 being of kind of a public health, life safety issue, 3 being those ones that have been around for 20 years, and we're slowly getting them now. COVID hit us pretty hard on that because for a while we'd actually go out with some of our bigger violators or in the backwoods violators, and we'd essentially draw a grid on an aerial photo and say, if you do this within 30 to 60 days, then we will not issue a ticket. And that, we kind of lost track on that during COVID, and we hope to start that back up because fines will get progress, but on some of these, you're essentially going to have to go through the prosecutor's office and ask for some sort of action to go ahead and clean the property and put it on the back on the taxes. That's something we've done a couple times, and that is something we need to look at in the future. But that gets you a little pressed sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. President, I did have a question. I notice, I'm just seeing this now, that Woodhull Township has a number of, on the monthly enforcement report, there's like a couple of pages of items. Is that a normal, what's going on in Woodhull?
The priority system, we call it our first Sunday list. So the first Sunday in a given month, what will generate is where we're supposed to be. And so in order to be efficient, sometimes we look at a certain quadrant of the county. We don't want to be in Fairfield on Monday and then all the way down in Burns on Wednesday. That just keeps us kind of in a quadrant. We're familiar with it, and that way when we're leaving notices and stuff for people, they can get a hold of our inspectors and they can be present. Our latest one in Woodhull was very interesting. And we've been on the phone with the owner at the end of, not the owner at the end of last week, the contracting company out of Clinton County that decided to go ahead and put the 2 demolished houses in Shiawassee County right in the middle of a farm field. So, we were down there anyways, and so you'll probably see some Woodhull again on the February report because we're down there, our guys waiting for the bulldozer show up, because we know, we keep hearing from the owners that they're bringing heavy equipment on there and working. And he actually was able to stop the driver, inform him that he could be ticketed, and we're ticketing the owner and the owner of the business and those sorts of things. So he's down there, he might as well squirrel around the corner and check out another violation. So it may get heavy in a certain area, certain periods of time. But we are working on that, and we expect compliance on that lovely mess here shortly.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. All right, next, moving on to agenda items. The first is to approve the proposal from AKT Peerless for support with the Brownfield Redevelopment Board in an amount not to exceed $16,400.
Oh, I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Support.
Support, okay. Do we have any?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So the first step in our economic redevelopment process for the county was to create the land bank, which the treasurer chairs. And we're getting several properties into it. Probably 40 is what we're at about at the moment. Several of them are developable lots that will be sold. However, part of the process, we also got blight elimination money. And the blight elimination money comes in, we take care of the blighted property, and then we hope for some redevelopment. Well, the next step is the redevelopment process, and that's where we create brownfields so that we can help capture the tax over a period of time. Now, the Land Bank Board has been appointed to the Brownfield Development Board so that they're working together as one board. Well, the next step is to revitalize the Brownfield Board. Land Bank is its own governmental entity. The Brownfield Board is a appointed board that's under the county. So the next step we need to do is prepare the Brownfield Redevelopment Board so that they can capture the appropriate amount of taxes for each project. We have about 4 projects that will be coming to us in the near future that this should be able to repay itself soon. We have 2 individuals with us that can add additional information to that. We have Sam Seimer from AKT Peerless, who has been working with the Land Bank through the Simplicity Project on several different elements of the demolition. And then we have Justin Horvath, who has been a big supporter of this. And this morning, the Land Bank Board passed a resolution in support of reactivating this and using this funding, or using this proposal.
Excellent. Is there anything to add?
I just wanted to introduce myself.
Yeah.
Good evening, I'm Samantha Seimer. I'm the Vice President of Economic Development Services with AKT Peerless. If you're not familiar with AKT, we are first and foremost an environmental consulting and engineering firm. However, as Dr. Boggs has mentioned, along with the due diligence side of things comes incentives for redevelopment and capturing those taxes to repurpose these sites and reactivate them in your communities. So I've been in economic development for almost 10 years now, served on the municipal side and then moved over to the private sector. Done over $100 million of brownfield work. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to make a couple additional comments. Thank you for the support we've gotten from the Board of Commissioners for creating the land bank. It has been, I think, an even better success than we could have anticipated so far. Thank you, Julie, as our chair. Greg, you've been a great member of the board. We also have Cameron Horvath from Durand, Mark Frazier from Perry Township, and Jerry Meyer as the other board members. And I think collectively together, we have gotten a lot of great work done so far. More great work is coming. To echo what Brian said, though, in order to be able to take advantage of redevelopment of some of these properties, we really need to be able to put together these brownfield plans. So there's opportunity to, as Brian said, collect some of the tax dollars from redevelopment of these properties, but there are technical plans that have to be developed that, quite honestly, are even above my scope. This is really getting into the weeds, and we need a technical expert to do that, and that's really where Sam comes in. I've known her for many years. She's one of the best economic developers in the state of Michigan. She actually was president of our state association after I was president, so we've worked in leadership at the Michigan Economic Developers Association for a number of years. But she knows how to do this, she knows how to put the numbers together, and that's really what we need to have, because these plans are very, very detailed, and require that level of data in order to be able to implement. So what will happen, as Brian said, should this contract be approved, we'll work with Sam, the Brownfield Board, and the Land Bank Board, which are working basically one and the same, to put all this together and give us that opportunity to collect those dollars on several projects. Brian referenced 4. We definitely have some good things with 4, maybe even more coming too. We've got a lot of properties we want to do this work with. So I'd certainly encourage your support of the contract proposal. Thank
There
you.
are 2 that will be coming before the brownfield in 2 months,
Okay.
and so it would be imperative that we get the process started.
Yes.
I do have a question.
Yeah,
for
Tom.
Mr. Horvath.
Yeah.
Now, you talk about the economic support that you're getting and so on, but the whole idea of brownfield is to take badly contaminated, previously contaminated land and try to make it usable again for development. And to me, that would entail not just economic prowess and knowledge, but scientific, chemical, and so on. And so, what sort of support are you getting in terms of the analysis that's done to establish that it can be put back into safe use from a scientific standpoint?
That's a great question, Tom, because brownfield actually has several different definitions. So the most well-known that people think of is some level of contamination. Something's buried in the ground or something like that. That certainly does qualify. What's also interesting, though, is it includes things like functional obsolescence, which is a property that is proposed to be used differently than what it was built for. For example, we're working on redeveloping the Wausau Middle School into apartments. That's an example of functional obsolescence. Blight is another one where there's not necessarily contamination, but a building is falling down. We've learned that very well utilizing the blight grant that we're receiving through the land bank. The other thing, though, that's really interesting about having a land bank in place, properties that are in a land bank are automatically considered a brownfield for incentive purposes, even if there's absolutely nothing wrong with the property. So ironically, the best development sites that we have gotten from the state land bank, the properties that have come over, are actually greenfield sites that have no environmental issues with them. So it really depends on the property. Maybe if, Sam, if you want to add anything to that from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, it depends on the property. If there is contamination, we do have our scientists and geologists at our disposal to use and help us understand what kind of contaminants of concern may be on the site. As Justin mentioned, any property that is in the land bank qualifies for brownfield incentives. And it's not just the environmental cleanup, it's also demolition, lead and asbestos abatement, those pre-development activities that a developer has to undertake, your environmental site assessments, releasing your liability through a baseline environmental assessment. So all of those things are able to be used, and then we're able to also, in certain core communities, use these tax dollars for public infrastructure purposes as well. So site preparation and infrastructure improvements within public right-of-way, which is a huge asset to both the land bank and the Brownfield Board and the communities.
So in sum, the key element that we're going to use it for is because land bank property automatically becomes eligible no matter its condition.
So, but I take it then, the nature of the response is that if there is environmental concerns, and do you designate that for us? You say there are 2 more coming up. Will that be indicated as part of the process?
Yes.
And if so, I take it that you would be responsible. I'm sorry, your name is
Samantha. Sam.
Sam. Okay, I wasn't. Okay, Sam. But you would provide that support in terms of analyzing the nature of the site.
When it gets too technical, I will make sure my environmental people are here. You're going to want me to stick to the financial piece rather than the environmental piece.
Okay,
But
so,
I have a gentleman named Brian Westoff, and he and I work hand in hand on these projects.
all right, okay.
As it gets above my pay grade, but bringing reinforcements.
Okay.
To your point, that Tom, one good example that has already been analyzed that will be one of these first projects is the Simplicity building in Durant, which is one of the projects the Land Bank Board authorized demolition funding for, and there has been environmental work done there. There's all kinds of interesting things
A lot
with
of
that
things
building.
happening there.
Yeah, asbestos, a few other details. So the idea, and maybe just to one more point of clarification. So the idea is if there are environmental conditions, how do we get them taken care of, right? That's one of the big questions. The idea is with this tax program, when that demolition happens, that resets the value essentially to zero. It's zero now because it's tax exempt. When somebody builds something on that property and generates property tax revenue, that money is a revenue source to pay back those costs. So I think one of the nice things about tax increment financing, the project is paying for itself. And I think this is important for the citizens to know. This is not the general fund, so to speak, of your county, of your cities, of your townships. This is the tax revenue generated from the project going to pay for those project costs. So I think that's important to be able to tell constituents. So, yeah, I want to add to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion from commissioners? If none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Next up, presentation from Justin Horvath.
Okay, back up again. So I'm actually going to have my vice president join me on this too, because he's really spearheading on behalf of our team. We have a very unique opportunity to be able to work with students from Michigan State University. And as a Wolverine, I'm happy to say we're proud to do that. I definitely have enjoyed getting to know these kids over the last few weeks. They are part of the Urban Planning School at MSU, and they're working with us on a really interesting project that I think not only has benefit to county government, but really all of our cities, villages, and townships. So one thing that's interesting that we've identified, and I think we all know this, most, not every, but most cities, villages, townships, the county, all have different processes as it relates to development. You know, different timelines, different ordinances, things of that nature, different zoning codes. So what we thought would be beneficial is, could we have somebody, in this case a group of MSU students, be able to go through and basically catalog what every single municipality in Shiawassee County is doing. Every city, village, township in the county. I believe that's 28 different jurisdictions. With the idea of doing a couple things. Number one, being able to see what everybody is doing is good. Being able to identify maybe some opportunities for collaboration, or who's doing something well, maybe not well, can we pair things up? But also, one of the things we've not had that would be wonderful for each jurisdiction to have is essentially what I'll call a checklist, where if I'm a home builder, if I'm a factory, if I'm some other type of development interest, being able to walk into City Hall or the county or a township and having that information right up front, almost in like a list form, a checklist form, available to those prospects, which really, provides more information, streamlines the process, I think makes it a little more welcoming for development. So they're actually going to help us put that checklist together. So Brent, do you want to expound on that?
Sure. So we're a few weeks into the project right now. We started meeting with the students in mid-January. To date, we've had them visit the community and sit down with a number of our government officials, including Dr. Boggs and Pete Preston, to get kind of the county view of things. We're really right now just entering into the real heavy lifting of the research phase. SEDP has made an initial contact with each of the appropriate folks at the municipalities, and the students will be following up with a sort of either Zoom call or telephone call with a questionnaire to really take in those processes. If a rezoning needs to be addressed, what is the application process? What meetings do they need to attend? If it's a site plan, building and permitting, all of those things. Our goal is, Justin has used the term checklist, until we get to the conclusion of this data gathering, whether it's a one-page checklist or it needs to be something a little bit more elaborate than that, will be determined. But really the goal is to have the most efficient communication of that information really centralized into one place. And the one thing I will say, just to add on to Justin's comments, through our initial meetings, we've had a chance to talk to both some businesses who have been through the process, as well as the government entities overseeing these processes. It seems like there's good interest on both sides, that everybody thinks this will make just this entire process a little bit more functional, get the expectations clearer. Everybody on both sides of the aisle are going to know what's going on. So We're really excited to have this project wrapped up. It's going to be ongoing through, I believe, April 19th is our final expected delivery date. So I know Pete's probably going to be getting another phone call here in the next week or so. And certainly we can keep you appraised of the process, but that's where we're at as of today.
All right, excellent, thank you. Comments from commissioners, discussion? Thank you for sharing that. I think that'll be a great help to both sides, knowing what's happening, and what to expect if you're gonna open a business or develop a house or anything, okay?
Nice way for government outreach. to
Absolutely.
Say, you wanna open a business in downtown Corunna, here's some of the things you need to be thinking of. Here's some of your points of contact. That's great.
It's good outreach for a Wolverine, just some good Spartans.
They only did that because they won this year. All right, thank you. With that, our second call to the public. Hearing none, meeting is adjourned.
Finance will start in just a few moments.
And for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have anyone from the public to address the Finance Committee today? Seeing no one, we are going to add an agenda item. We have D, which is going to be some type of heating problem over in District Court.
Yeah, district court furnace. Guard area.
What?
Guard area.
It's not your office?
Eastman Fund?
All right. Julie, do you have our monthly report?
Good evening, everybody. Busy time in the treasurer's office. The 28th of February is the deadline to pay 2021 taxes to avoid forfeiture fees that go on March 1st. So a lot of people are coming in and trying to get that stuff taken care of to avoid those fees. The 28th is also a deadline at the local treasurers, be it the township or the cities, to pay your taxes there to avoid them going delinquent and coming over to the county. So it's a busy time. a lot of people check in at our office and it's like, no, you can still pay them there, go to your local units. So busy time with that this month. And then March is also our really busy month because March 31st is the deadline to pay 2020 taxes to avoid foreclosure on April 1st. So, working with a lot of people needing maybe extensions or help with their taxes. My HAF program is just proving to continually every week I'm getting new numbers, new people being accepted and approved for that program, so working really good. That's about all I have on that front, I guess, right now. Just busy time collecting taxes with these deadlines and helping as many people as we can. I don't think I'll have too many that actually need the extension because the MyHack program has come through and helped a lot of those that would end up needing those extensions. But just busy tax collection time. And then in March, of course, we'll be settling with those local units. They collect till February 28th, and then in March they turn their books over to us, and we go through them and we come to an agreement and settle up with them, and then start the collection in our office. March, we will also have our move to the new building, so it's going to be kind of a crazy month, I have a feeling. But
Julie's very excited about it.
It is what it is, and we will be, we'll learn to work together and be fine. We'll survive it.
Well,
I hope, anyway, I hope. I plan on surviving.
you will.
You will. You will.
Griffin.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll get it worked out.
Remember when we used to have to convert everything to Manatron from the book?
I was on the township side of it, so I didn't have to.
You never did the book?
I just turned in my stuff to the county, and I never had to do anything with the Manatron thing.
Thank God for BSNA.
Yeah, for sure.
Amen.
And thank goodness all of I think every local unit uses BSNA now, so.
Well, it was the county that didn't. They used Manatron.
And I know.
That was the problem.
Yeah, we're all on the same page now, so it's working smoother, I'd say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, anything else for Julie?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll move into our first agenda item. I would entertain a motion to adopt the proposed pay scale changes, deputy public defenders to grade 12, chief public defender to grade 13, and public defender to $112,000.
So moved.
All right, moved and supported.
Can we talk about this a little bit?
Oh, definitely. We talked about it a lot last month, and we can, you have the floor.
I certainly don't want to appreciate that everyone in the county is underpaid and would like to get raises. But I'm concerned about this because it unlevels the playing field. And when we adopted the Public Defender's Office and the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission was created, I was quite involved in it. I testified in both the Senate and the House on a couple of occasions. And myself and Dale DeGarmo drafted the plan that we use today. And the purpose or the hope was that we would have a level playing field. The idea of the Michigan Defense Commission was to, we weren't spending enough on indigent defense, and there was a deal cut between the ACLU and Governor Snyder, and they agreed to develop a plan, which they did. And most counties pay their public defenders the same as their prosecutors, I believe. We certainly did here because we thought that was the fair thing to do, and I still think it is. And if you start paying public defenders more than the prosecutors, the playing field will no longer be level, and that sends the message that as a county, we favor defendants more than criminal victims of crimes, and I'm just concerned. If the idea is to raise the prosecutors up to the same level, that's great, and I would encourage that because when either the public defender's office or the prosecutor's office advertises, we don't get many qualified applicants, for either. It's a problem, and it's getting worse all over. But that's just my 2 cents worth. Again, you'll probably do as you choose, and it's your call, not mine. But I would encourage you to think long and hard before you change the playing field. Because as a judge, that's one of the things we want is a level playing field for everyone who comes to court, and including the prosecutor. So, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a couple of things. The playing field is not completely level as it is right now. So you have the CAPA in the chief assistant prosecutor upstairs on a different wage scale than the chief deputy in the public defender's office. You also have the public defender on a different pay scale than the prosecutor's office. And the prosecutor's office here does not do corporate counsel work. They only do the same thing, the opposite of Mr. Corwin.
Right, and that's why a year ago or whatever, I voted no when we did those raises upstairs, because they weren't on the scale. So how far off are we then between Doug and?
Yep, so if you go to this page in your packet, this should be the last one right before B. Right,
Yeah,
are you talking about Doug or the attorneys in Doug's office?
No, I'm talking about the public defender and the prosecuting attorney.
The chief public defender
Yes.
and the prosecuting attorney?
Yes.
Doug makes what I make and Scott makes 112.
So then we're gonna move the public defender to 112.
To match the prosecutor.
Okay, so
And then the chief.
then it goes off from there.
Right, so the chief assistant prosecutor upstairs also is in the same bracket as I am, which means that she is in the same bracket as Doug is currently, and that his chief is actually in the bracket below.
By his, you mean Doug's
Yes.
chief?
Yeah, so Doug's chief is a 12, Scott's chief is a 13.
Wasn't supposed to be that way.
I think it's important to also note that, if you recall, the reason for these changes were recommendations coming out of the state, and the state will basically pay for it. If we start raising other pay, we run into this every time we raise somebody's pay, then that of course comes out of our budget, and if we raise the pay here, then there are other departments that'll say, hey, what about us? And it's tough. So we have kind of an opportunity here to raise one area, paid for by somebody else, and is it worth it to, I would say, cost a certain amount of hard feelings, I don't know. I'm one that leans towards scraping every penny we can get out of the state, because while we might still have some problem getting prosecutors, which is why we did raise the pay, we couldn't get anybody, we'll have an easier time getting public defenders. A little bit unfair, yeah, probably, but enough that we should go down that let's raise everybody.
Well, for purposes of discussion on Wednesday, I will have the documents for you, the budget projections of what it would take to raise them as well.
Okay.
So that you guys can consider those numbers of what it would take. Because right now, the APAs are 11s, and so are the public defenders. So we're proposing moving them to 12s, the public defenders, so that they are in the comparable wage from the state. Does not match at all. There's some overlap between the two, but they're not one for one. They're still substantially below the recommended.
My only concern about just going with the state recommendation, and I appreciate money coming from the state, I appreciate what Chairman Brodeur has to say, but when they're making a recommendation for the state, they're making recommendations for counties like Oakland and Washington and other counties too, and this is Shiawassee County. I mean, we don't necessarily have the funds to follow all of the state recommendations. It's a guideline. And I think we have to deal with what is fair here in Shiawassee County, in keeping our employee morale up and creating a level playing field. So if creating disparity, no matter where the funds comes from, just seems like not a good practice for us locally. If there's not disparity, great. But then also looking at what do raises look like, you know, as we move forward with raises. Will there be disparity in the future? I think that's, all of those things are important to consider.
And I think you still, no matter what you do, you still need to consider the chief deputy for the public defender and the public defender where there already is disparity.
And we're bringing, this is bringing that
That does
equal.
fix that as well.
That's what I wasn't sure, because, so there won't be a disparity now on those
Not
top two.
between the chief public defender and the public defender.
Okay.
You trade one disparity for another.
It's
So the disparity will now be where?
It will be with the actual public, deputy public defenders and the APAs. But I can get you a number of what it would take to raise the APAs on Wednesday for your consideration, but that's a general fund expense versus a state fund expense.
It's hard for me to turn down free money that will benefit our employees, even if there's only a limited number. If somebody had a grant out there, or somebody left in their will that loved our park system and said, I'm gonna give you all this money so you can double your parks employees, maintenance people's wages, that would kind of be unfair to everybody else, but would we turn it down? We'd say to our employees, no, we don't want other people to feel bad, so you can't have this money that costs us nothing. I understand there's an unfairness thing, but turning down money that the state's offering, they're causing the disparity and they're causing the unfairness. And jobs vary a lot, and sometimes pay even varies. And sometimes people just have to swallow those job differences. We hear all the time about different departments, and you know, Caroline tells us how incredibly hard, how much overtime her people put in, and other, you know, I'm sure Tim could tell us how awful it is to be out there shoveling the snow when it's 20 below, and so on. I would be hard pressed to tell those same employees from the public defender's office that we turn down money for them and their families because we just didn't want to deal with the feelings.
Can we hear from Doug? I know that he may have some input.
I'm going to add to the judge's history lesson. I started as a public defender, court-appointed attorney in Shiawassee County back in 1998 under Judge Lestrado. At that time, I don't think we were making the increased pay. I think I started at $30 an hour to do court-appointed work for the county. Then that increased to $60 and pretty much had stayed at $60 all the way through up to the years until the Public Defender's Office came into existence. The reason the Public Defender's Offices, and there are three basic models, there's an office like we have, and by the way, Shiawassee County is the example MIDC, Michigan Indigent Defense Council, whom I kind of work for, uses to legislators to say this works. Because when we came out of the gate, we had an 80% win rate against prosecuting attorneys to level the playing field. We never used to have access to an investigator. We never used to have access to psychological things and a whole gamut of things that I can get on behalf of my clients without having to go to a judge and ask for money. The old system, if you wanted to have a psychological evaluation of your client, you had to go to the court, and that's pretty much standard procedure. But a few times we run across where we're like, I'm not sure. I have the funds to go and have a private one done first, and if that comes out to help my client, there is a problem, then I present it to the court for an independent one down at the state of Michigan level. So there's a whole lot of different things us coming into existence has done. We have the office model. There's a model that strictly has one person be my position, and then they farm out all the cases to different attorneys throughout the county, and they have to keep up the same educational requirements that we do. Something the prosecutor's office does not have to do. We have to take 12 continuing ed credits a year minimum to maintain. If we do not do it, you are kicked off my list and you're no longer a county employee if you don't do it. So there are some strict requirements to make sure we keep up. We have now entered, they have passed and approved through MIDC and LARA, Licensing and Regulatory Administration, standard number 8. When we first came into existence, we had to comply with standards 1, 2, 3, and 4. That meant meeting places, training requirements, all sorts of standards that they set up for us. And with the county, about 90% of our budget comes from the state. This will not drain any county coffers. In fact, I think my budget would so fully support what I sat down with Administrator Boggs and worked with him to come up with the numbers and the state of Michigan. And they're in that range. Other places are higher. But why the system was broke is because of different relationships and things going on. If you angered a secretary of one of the judges, you didn't get court appointments. If you angered a judge by winning the trial, they would walk off the bench. And I had this happen to me, Saginaw County, not our county. And I was doing work for them at $25 an hour. Walked off the bench because I had won the trial and was mad. I have had elected judges come in and say, no, you're doing too much court appointed work. I'm going to reduce your load by 60%. I've had that happen to me. I've also, because I angered a secretary, not got court appointed cases for a year. So the state went out and studied all this and said, okay, the system is broke. They were getting sued, so they reached a settlement to come up with public defenders' offices. We have recently, last year, initiated Standard 5, and all these standards were published while public defender's office was being made here in Shiawassee County, when Judge Clarkson was creating us and working on that diligently. And I think he has been one of the most supportive judges for our office, and I take his opinion and recommendations highly. But what has happened over the years, there's been a huge disparity. MIDC is coming along and saying, okay, Section 8 is, we want to have comparable wages, and you can only do so many cases per attorney, so many felonies and so many misdemeanors. We haven't got the exact numbers yet on that, but somewhere around 100 felonies a year per attorney and maybe 400 misdemeanor cases. If you exceed them, then you're in violation of your commitment to MIDC. We work with MIDC, they make the recommendations, they implement them through statutory law. Shiawassee County has been a shining example of what a public defender's office is and could be doing. And I can tell you today, I had at least 10 cases this morning, kept me tied up till noon, had to meet with a client through my lunch, and then try to get a motion drafted and up to the court. So I keep very busy. I take the same amount of cases as my attorneys do to make sure it's fair, and do administration on either my own time or fit it in. But this standard is passed. They're suggesting that all county public defenders, and there was quite a range in the email that I sent from my representative, to Mr. Boggs, that I think was shared with everybody, for really small counties to larger counties. My position in some larger counties could be $189,000 a year. And I'm just like, whoa. I just got an email because we are part of a coalition that works together. There was a job opening in Dearborn for an assistant attorney working in human resources for 88 minimum start up to 118,000 a year. We are underpaid. Right now, my department makes less than the prosecutor for myself, and Amy makes less than the chief assistant. The chief assistant is on the same grade as what I am, and I'm a department head. And I know we've talked about not fair before on things, wages and things, with other department assistants not making as much as an office manager, so to speak. So this has been enacted by MIDC. They have to present what they want. I'm presenting to the board, working with our administrator, one that will match what the prosecutor's office is doing as best I can and to keep in with the mandate of Section 8 or Standard 8 that's been initiated. So by doing those, we're only raising, I think, the proposal is a few $1,000s on the lower end of somebody starting, which means fresh out of law school, and then bumping it up to no more than 86.5 for somebody that's got 6 years or plus of experience. And so it's relatively close to prosecutor's offices. Yes, there would be a little disparity for the assistants, but I can tell you Scott Kerner has got an open position and has been open for, I think, 2 years that can't get filled. I had hired 2 open positions for mine, and it was very hard to get somebody to come in. So the playing field is certainly becoming more level, and we're able to do our job. Both departments are increasingly busy, and we're overwhelmed, and it's some days like today, I'm just running constantly. And I leave it to the board. This is money that is coming in wages. I live here in the county. Most of my attorneys are on the outskirts or in the county. That is money that we will spend in this county, purchasing vehicles, purchasing houses, paying bills, groceries, and that helps build up the community. And this money that I'm proposing to raises does not cost the county any money. In fact, it kind of gets more for the county in the 3% that I pay back for processing of administration, such as wages and benefits. 3% of what it costs, we have to pay. The county gets a 3% administration fee. That's been approved by MIDC, paid rents and other things that help contribute back to the standard $100,000 that the county pays a year. We recoup, I would guess, at least half of that back through fees and rent and other things. So I think we're a good department for the county. I am trying to keep up with the mandates that I have to follow from MIDC. Nobody has ever challenged them. I don't know what would happen if you say, no, we're not going to do it. Are they going to pull out? I would doubt it, but I don't know then what kind of problems that's going to cause. I'm just asking the board. It does make it the prosecutor, myself on the same level, and my chief deputy, Amy Houston, as the same as the prosecution's chief deputy's level.
So is the salary a mandate or was it a recommendation?
So here's what the language says specifically. Reasonable salaries and benefits and resources should be provided to Indigent Defense Council. The rates paid by the Michigan Attorney General for Special Assistant Attorney Generals or other state offices serve as guidelines for reasonable compensation.
The operative word seemed to be should. Does that suggest, and
I believe it said shall. It is
shall would be pretty.
That's
pretty
their suggestion. I do know other counties are enacting the same as we speak. We all have to have this basically done and plan in place come April.
I did have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And you kind of anticipated the question, I think, is what would MIDC do if we don't follow, I think it was like Rule 8 or Section 8 in there, and comply with their wishes? And you suggested, I want to ask you because you suggested you're not sure. I hope they wouldn't pull out, which would, if they did, it would suggest they're more interested in protecting the attorneys than they are the indigents. And this whole idea of playing field, anytime we walk into court, those are prone to do that sort of thing, and they're two counsel, unless you know the firm they're from, some firms charge $400 an hour, maybe less. Here in Shiawassee might be half that, but we don't necessarily know, and we don't try to ascertain whether the economic field is, what do we call it, the equal playing field. I guess I'm concerned that that standard would be very difficult to judge this by, and I think it cuts both ways, frankly. I'm also concerned that Judge indicated there was a deal cut with the ACLU at one point, but it sounds like that they were concerned about raising one group without concern for keeping it a balanced playing field. I think we've got a difficult decision here, and the balanced playing field doesn't necessarily help us. I'm not sure where it takes us, but obviously we want competent counsel on both sides of the table. I can tell you in the old days, and this goes back to the old days when I was with the JAGs in the military, and before they even had judges for courts martial and so on, you would have regular officers assigned as prosecution. The only one who had to be an attorney in those days, a JAG attorney, was the defense counsel, because the idea was if you were going to weight it, you're going to weight it on the side of the guy who's being charged and who faces the most immediate jeopardy. My point is that's a difficult balance to make, and I'm not sure trying to achieve that is going to be possible for us.
If I may answer, what will the state do if we don't enact their mandates, follow their rules? One, we lose the public defender's office. They could stop funding us. Two, I don't know if they could find it. I don't really know what they could do.
Excuse me, they can do that under the existing law. They can
defund us. If I'm not in compliance with their mandates, they will defund us. That I do know will happen. And you lose the public defender's office, and then you go back to the old way of system, which is not in compliance with the state, which is going to end up costing the county probably anywhere between $300,000 to $500,000 a year more than if you start farming it out. One of the beauty things about working with MIDC is it keeps the county's law costs low. Before, there would be $300,000 roughly paid out in court-appointed attorney fees. The county would recoup a lot of that, but that took manpower from the county to do collection. County no longer has to do collection of court-appointed attorney fees. That saves work off the judges and their staff collecting them. We have started getting a few more clients that can afford to pay for an attorney, so we have been billing them, and we've brought in some, it's minimal right now, a couple $100 here and there, maybe close to about $600, $700 so far this year. That goes to we give the checks over to Treasury. And then in turn, 80% comes back to the general fund, and 20% goes to MIDC. So as we have developed, and unfortunately most of the clients here in the county cannot afford attorneys according to the MIDC standards, and we have to run them through income. The sole requirement for a public defender is based on your income, and we know Shiawassee County's median income is pretty low, and so most of them qualify. I'm just asking we keep kind of in step with not only what we're doing in the prosecutor's office, but also keep in step with what MIDC has asked us to do. It does not cost you any more. In fact, there's not really any downside to it. Yes, groups of people get upset when there's a 2% raise for some and 3% for others, 10% for others. That does make people upset. But this brings some more parity and closer to what the management makes in the public defender's office compared to management in the prosecutor's office.
Doug, I think Gary had a
Yeah,
question.
I can't even vote on this. It's up to the finance. There's 3 people, and all they're gonna do is move it on to Wednesday, I hope, so it's up to the 3 people that's on the finance to move it on, to discuss it some more. So that's what the issue is right now, I
Right.
think, so.
And.
I don't know if everybody knows that, so.
I'm.
We can talk for hours, but we can't decide anything until they move it on until Wednesday.
I'm in favor of moving it to Wednesday with the additional item of what it would cost to move the APAs to match.
I will have that for you.
All right, are we calling for a vote here?
I would like to.
Thank you. All those in favor of moving this to Wednesday signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, the same. All right.
Thank you.
We will
Thank you.
move on then to item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I would entertain a motion to approve the replacement of the Deputy Finance Director at a grade 11.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and supported to replace that position. Any discussion?
Just very briefly, Lacey was with us for about 2 years, and she has moved on to an advanced position, and we just want her to be able to refill that. We have found that it takes at least 2 people in the finance department. We have already posted it because of the short turnaround, and we have 3 or 4 applicants already. A couple of them seem very qualified. I think that we'll be ready to do interviews, assuming that this passes on Thursday.
All right. Any further questions on that? I mean, we did not replace the position that we had up front, so Lacey was instrumental in picking up that extra work, so I definitely think we need to move on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. All right, that will move along. Which brings us to agenda item C. I would entertain a motion to approve the match of $15,000 for CACS Financial Literacy Program to accompany a $50,000 grant from the Cook Family Foundation.
So moved.
Support.
Thank you.
Just some background on this, and I'll ask Julie to come up here as well. Julie called and had some conversations with Cook Foundation about a financial literacy program related to taxes, particularly making sure that they're paid, which, as we've seen through the MyHalf program, has been a substantial help and support to the community. However, CACS doesn't have the money on its own to do it, and so the Cook Family Foundation pledged $50,000 if we would pledge 15.
And I did meet with Tom Cook on this. My only concern is that I think financial literacy is great. It is limited to only those with foreclosure issues, so.
Well, not necessarily so. When we see people who are struggling, they might have lots of other issues, and it might not just be their property taxes. It might be utilities they're struggling with, or their food, or CACS, it's Capital Area Community Services is what that stands for. They have legal help, maybe somebody has grandma's house, grandma left their house, they don't have a house payment, they're still kind of struggling with things, and they'll help them get the house put in their name.
So there doesn't have to be a foreclosure issue?
No, there doesn't have to be a foreclosure. They'll help them with numerous other things, that way more resources than I have in the office to help them. It doesn't have to be a foreclosure. It can just be somebody who's really struggling and needs some help. So one of their first things is they'll sit down, they call it their financial literacy program, and they'll sit down and try to work a budget out with them. And so they can see, you help them see the picture of, this is your income, this is how much you have coming in, we've got to figure out where to use it. It doesn't have to be a foreclosure only situation.
Huh, then.
I mean, it does help prevent foreclosure.
That was misrepresented to me.
It does definitely help prevent foreclosure. That is that's a very important key point, but there's a lot of other issues.
Yeah, no, I specifically asked if they had to be in foreclosure, and I was told yes.
No.
So thank you for clearing
Yeah,
that up.
I mean, I'll direct them to, if they say they're struggling, I'll either give them CACS's phone number, or I'll say, would you like me to email? Jim Crane is my key contact. Can I email Jim your telephone number and have him reach out to you? And usually they'll say, oh yes, that would be great, that would be great. And maybe some of them don't. Some are easier to catch on and work with or whatever, and then some struggle, but they'll help them with all sorts of issues.
When they have a tax problem, then you're
I
referring
mean, that's
them
when it comes to
to
my,
your, right, so,
my attention is when I can look at their taxes and say, oh, they're really struggling. Sometimes, but it might be there are other things, it might be utilities, and it'll be, oh, Jim can help them get with DHS, and they have the resources to say, oh, this is what you need to do, we can help you, we can get you here, this is where you can go, or.
yeah, we do that in veterans.
Right, similar to, so lots of different needs, not just their tax foreclosure situation. But yeah, they've been
No,
great.
no, it wasn't tax foreclosure, it was that, and I have it in an email, that they had a foreclosure on their house. So.
Like mortgage or,
Mhm.
I've just they've helped with lots of people who were not in that
So,
foreclosure.
okay, so our
situation, yeah.
15,000 then is for anyone that contacts your office or just anyone in general?
Anyone in general.
Okay.
A Shiawassee County resident, and if they contact CACS on their own, even without me being privy to it at all, they'll have that time to give Shiawassee County. Their other grant funding dried up, they're done. They only have a few hours a week at this point to give Shiawassee County, and they really need it. I can't say enough good about what they do for the residents and working with people.
So the only criteria to take advantage of this is to be a resident of Shiawassee County?
Mhm.
Okay.
And normally I would not support such social programs because I don't think that's the role of county government. However, the foundation, the Cook Family Foundation, is providing such a large match, and I do think that it qualifies as an expenditure that we can use either from delinquent tax or from the ARPA funds. And I recommend that you wait till the end of the year and then allocate to see which pot has the money left in it. But I think it's a qualifiable expense in this particular case.
So we'll just kind of go year by year as to whether, so we'll commit to the 15,000 for just this year.
That's all they have asked for at this point.
Okay. All right, any further questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. So that moves along, and that brings us to our added item D.
Yep, Tim Hill, if he'd like to come forward. We do need a furnace that has gone out in the district court guard area. It costs $6,500 to replace. If we move it on today, we can order it and have it here and installed on President's Day. It's $500 over my spending limit.
Exactly. What are our options? You gotta have heat, don't you?
Well, it's just in the vestibule.
I don't know what there's to talk about here. I'm just.
You wanna go shallow?
I don't know. I
Wear an
could be
extra
wrong.
jacket. No.
I don't know.
One of those little kerosene heaters.
So is that a motion, Bill?
Yes.
Or a motion to approve the expenditure of up to $6,500 for a new furnace.
Yes.
Yes, that is Bill's motion.
That is my motion.
All right, without further ado, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same, and that motion carries. Which brings us to our call to the public. Nope, we are adjourned.
Sorry, my phone rang, but my wife called and got people running in the neighborhood. I told her